John's got some good notes.
I heard one from last week.
Probably Eric and Daniel, yeah. So again, I encourage you guys to kind of get with each other during the week, go over your notes, reflect on some of that stuff, and talk about this stuff amongst yourselves, even though we're not in class. So at the very beginning, we started with archetypes. Okay? Archetypes are sort of like general ideas about how people exist, right? We talked about the warrior, the lover, the monarch, and the magician. We talked about those because they give us some idea of what is potential in human beings, right? And we talked about those because we discussed the characteristics of each of those archetypes, right? What are some basic characteristics of somebody who's a warrior?
Strong.
Yep. What else?
Honor.
You have honor. Just
That's something
respect.
you're fighting for.
Yep, exactly. What about, yep, loyalty, good. So you guys have some understanding, right? What about a lover? Sensual. We talk about empathy, we talk about compassion, right? We talk about nurturing. A lover is about relationships. Yep. Then we talked about the monarch. The monarch is kind of the person who's responsible for other people. So what might be some characteristics of a monarch?
Helper.
Justice.
Yep, justice, a helper. Again, respect we talked about.
Problem solver.
Yep, problem solver. And then we talked about the magician. So the magician is kind of how I conceptualize how we interact with the divine. So if you have some kind of religious preference, that might be
Medicate.
a way to look at it.
Experience.
Say it again.
I was gonna say medicate, but not, I don't know. That would be right.
Kind of depends on how you're using Medicaid, right?
Yeah.
If it's healing and pushing you forward and helping you grow, great. If you're self-medicating to distract or ignore or numb, not so great. So Medicaid could be part of it.
Is that deflection too? Would that be deflection?
That would be, yeah, kind of like deflecting.
I was almost thinking like magician would like compose or create like the medication.
Yeah, exactly. So we talk about alchemy, right? We talk about
Alchemy.
transformation.
Alchemy,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So the idea with the archetypes is that you guys know.
Alchemist.
Yeah, exactly. You guys know some of those characteristics, and we all kind of possess some of them within ourselves, right? So my idea in discussing archetypes is to remind you guys that inside each of us, there is some kind of hero. There is some kind of person who, craves adventure and wants to do big and powerful things with their life and has all of those characteristics like bravery, empathy, compassion, leadership. We all have those inside of us. Sometimes the trauma that we've experienced clouds over those. We don't have access to them. And I feel like going through treatment is a great opportunity to get in touch with some of those again, right? You don't have that cloud of whatever addictive substance you've been using, and now you can kind of reveal some of those characteristics and hopefully build some of them up. Okay, that was archetypes, really quick. Questions on archetypes? Okay. Then we talked about somatic awareness. Somatic awareness is kind of like the mind-body connection. Anybody heard that term before?
Say that again.
Somatic awareness.
Somatic?
Yep.
Write it down, go on.
So again, this is trying to, well,
Sorry.
That's okay.
Spell that.
SOMATIC,
Hold it.
awareness, AWARENESS.
And that's your mind and body?
Yep.
I need to know that.
So this is where we start to talk about like how you feel the emotions that you experience. Okay, so we talked about, again, the mind-body connection. We talked about your thoughts and the physical felt sense matching your external environment. So this is when we started to talk about emotional regulation, right?
Thoughts and what?
Say it again.
Thoughts and.
Thoughts and your felt sense
Here we go.
Emotion.
and emotion. So I think,
Like radical acceptance of that too.
yeah, this is where we started to talk about radical acceptance, right? Where we're starting to experience the world with a sober mind, right? We're having some emotional experience ourselves. We're also getting stimuli from the external environment, right? We start to interact.
External relationship.
Yep, exactly. We start to interact with people. We have to observe their emotional state and be able to understand it, right? So there's a lot going on. And of course, it can be overwhelming, but there's sort of a pattern that you can follow to get better at this, right? So we talked about first, like our internal state. So somebody just shout out a couple emotions that you're familiar with.
Angry.
Of course, anger always comes up with dudes. What's up?
Fear.
Hold on. What else? Depression. Yep.
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
Confusion.
Confusion. What else?
PTSD.
Post-traumatic stress. Feeling lost. Yep. Happiness. Yeah. Joy. There's some positive ones too, right? We've all had some of those.
Confusion.
Confusion. So we have some idea of emotional states, but how do we know when we're experiencing a specific emotion?
Feel it.
Science.
Yeah, we feel it, but tell me about that. So if you're experiencing joy, what is a physiological or a body sensation?
Giddiness, like maybe like positive butterflies in the belly.
Yeah,
maybe
butterflies
laughter.
in the stomach. Yeah. So again,
Laughter.
laughter. Yeah, exactly. Right, and when you're when you're experiencing some of those other negative emotions that we talked about, right? We have things like our breath changing, right? If you're taking repeated slow or repeated fast shallow breaths, you're hyperventilating, that's a distress signal, right? If your heartbeat starts to speed up, that's a distress signal, right? And just on the other side too, if you're feeling calm and you're taking deep, slow breaths, that's a signal for the most part that things are okay. So we started talking about cueing into those signals, right? Cueing into when you're having an experience, what does that experience feel like, right? And does it match what's happening in the external environment? Okay? We're all familiar with anger, and that's a great place to start. There's nothing wrong with being angry, right? Sometimes what happens though is that the intensity of our anger doesn't match what's actually happening in our external environment. Right? It's okay to be angry if someone transgresses your boundary. It's not okay to be so angry that you punch a hole in the wall or you harm someone else. You guys understand the difference?
Yeah.
So we start talking about emotional regulation, or how to modulate your emotions to the external environment. Okay, and that's the big takeaway from somatic awareness are the skills and tools and knowledge that we have to regulate our emotions and modulate the intensity of our emotion to match the external environment.
Are those the same thing?
Relatively, yeah.
Each situation is evolving.
Yeah, exactly.
It's changing.
Right.
So you have to regulate your feelings to the situation that's happening.
Exactly.
So if I'm coming towards you, you're like,
Right, exactly. So I can observe your facial, right? I can observe your body language.
are you a threat to me?
Yeah, exactly. I can make an assumption that says, okay, right? And that changes every interaction. Okay?
Now
Then-
you're going to respond to that.
Right, exactly.
Healthy self-awareness.
Yep, exactly. That's the next point, right? That's where we started to talk about self-awareness, right? We started to talk about how trauma impacts the addiction process, and we started to talk about how you can increase your self-awareness of your past experiences and how they continue to impact your life today. So who's had something bad happen to them in their life? All of us have, right?
Horrible shit.
Yeah. So when we talk about trauma, I just want to be clear that trauma is just a situation that impacted you in a way that you didn't have the tools to navigate. Okay? So for some people, that might be something like losing a pet, right? And I use these examples because they're familiar to us. If I look at Paul and Paul's cat died, it might not feel like a big deal to me. But if Paul had that cat for 15 years and that was his only companion, that's going to be a pretty big deal to Paul. So I might not assume that that's a traumatic experience, but Paul is definitely going to experience that as trauma, right?
I'm a dog person anyway.
Okay, good. So I just want to be clear, right? Everyone's like threshold for what is traumatic is different. And even though you may experience something negative it doesn't necessarily mean it will be traumatic if you have the support and the skills to navigate it effectively. So an example we often use is like, if you have an aging parent and you're aware that they're about to pass away and you have a support network around you, sure, there's still going to be grief, there's still going to be sadness around that, but because of the love that goes into that situation, because you kind of know that it's going to happen, there's ways to navigate that so that it doesn't end up causing trauma in the future. You guys understand the difference? So just because something bad happens doesn't mean it's traumatic, and it can be anything that is traumatic as long as you don't have the skills and tools to navigate it effectively.
Is there such thing as like retroactive trauma, or like you don't realize it was traumatic until later on?
Yeah,
and you think
absolutely.
about it?
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Especially if that happens as a kid, right, where you don't really have a concept
Okay,
of
yeah,
what
okay, yeah, for sure.
what good and bad are, those kinds of things. Eric, you had something?
No, I kind of forgot what I was just saying with that. I kind of think that's good what Daniel said though. Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say, but that was good with drug damage. You really get, that could come up in like a, whatever counseling conversation, you'd be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and
it's
there's
not good to just throw away that thought. It's good to like maybe,
A random catalyst could happen, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, oh, whoa, wait a minute.
yeah, so we talked a little bit about dissociation and denial, right? And those are tools that your body and your brain use to help prevent damage during a traumatic experience.
Would those be like coping skills though? in a way?
They're not coping skills necessarily, because they're not things that you continue to use.
It's not healthy.
Yeah.
it's like activating, like,
Yeah.
So I went through one traumatic event that basically suppressed past trauma
Mm-hmm.
that brought it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that I suppressed it so long because I was already going through some horrible stuff anyway. So this brought a traumatic event, brought this other stuff out,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned to live in horribles.
Mm-hmm.
Horribles like normal for me. So I really dig what you're saying.
Yeah, so we call that complex PTSD, right? So you can have a single acute traumatic event, and that can give you some post-traumatic stress. You can also experience repeated or chronic
Severity.
trauma, yep, and that compounds it, right? It makes it double worse because you never have an opportunity to address each individual situation. You're just living in that.
but like when you identify that situation and the process of it, like, it's like a relief, and it's such a relief in a way, because then you have it, like, then you can decompartmentalize it.
For sure.
You're just like,
It can be, and that would be an ideal situation,
Yeah.
right? Be able to address one situation,
Yeah.
integrate it, and process it,
right,
and then move
that's
on.
gonna help with the next one, and also. so
Hopefully.
this is Good stuff.
Yep.
That's what I just learned all this, and that's what I realized how complicated my life has been because of just living in that trauma.
Yeah.
Just recycling.
Yeah.
it.
Right, and exactly. So as we come into sobriety, as you start to experience some of that with a sober mind, it can be super overwhelming. And that's the journey from now forward, right?
That's correct.
Got a long way to go, but that's good. Okay, so one reading reference that I'll mention, when we started talking about the phases of healing, we talked about Peter Levine. If you guys haven't read Peter Levine, you should check him out. He's got really good stuff on YouTube. He's written a few books. He talks about trauma from a variety of different perspectives, and they're all super helpful. We talked about the different phases of healing, and most of what he talks about centers around emotional regulation, how to feel your own emotions, how to communicate about them, how to observe emotions in other people, right? How to be discerning, right? So we understand that, some people are fake, or some people try to fool us or lie to us, right? How to understand when that's happening and react appropriately. Okay, and then finally we got into the stages of healing. And the stages of healing is part of a teaching tool that I'm using called the Hero's Journey. And this kind of covers all the stuff that I've talked about, right? The Hero's Journey. Break it down into 4 different stages. And right now we're going to tie all of these stages up. So this is kind of like the big finale, right? If you made it through all the phases of healing and you made it through the first 3 stages of the roadmap to recovery, this is the final stage where we are today. Okay? That was a super, super quick overview of everything. Does anybody have any questions on any of that before I keep going?
what was the beginning of the class?
The beginning, we started with archetypes.
And that was the 12-week?
Yep,
You said 12-week class, so that was the beginning?
yep, that was the very beginning.
And now it's consolidation?
Yep,
Which means what?
that's kind of like clumping it all together, hopefully getting some closure, and reminding you guys that this is a cyclical process,
Okay.
right? We talk about it and I teach it in sort of like a linear way, but we know that life is not like that, right? You're often going to come back to these things again and again and again, especially through the process of recovery. You don't just finish recovery and then get on with life, right?
I had to relapse.
Yeah, well, yeah, and relapse is a good example. But also, every day you wake up, life is going to be stressful, right? There are going to be challenges that you experience at base, right? You have to pay your bills, you have to transport yourself somewhere, you have to feed yourself, etc., etc. So setting this up to be a cyclical process means that every time we go through it, hopefully we get better at it.
And we do that like departure initiation.
Yeah, exactly, right, good. Eric's got notes. So we talked about the 3 kind of phases of the hero's journey, right? That departure is kind of any time that you are going to transform yourself to be a different kind of person. So what are some examples of departure in your lived experience?
Departure is what again?
Oh.
Anytime in life when you're going to try and be some kind of a different person.
Becoming a parent.
Right, so parenthood, right? You go from being maybe a single guy or a person in a partnership, now you're bringing another human being into the world. There's going to be things about you that change.
That one, or being an uncle, almost being a grandparent.
Yeah, all of those. Anytime a new life comes into the world and you're part of it, it's going to be different.
Yeah, I got quite a few nieces and nephews that yeah, because they're Missouri,
Nice.
so it's beautiful.
How about another example? Go ahead, sir.
When I left from California to live in Oregon.
Right, yeah, so moving like physical locations, right? So leaving an old neighborhood, moving somewhere new. Yep, probably new social circles, right? Different friends, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For sure. What else?
Departure from materialistic stuff,
For example?
like cars, property,
Yeah.
that just re-trigger trauma and relapse.
Yeah, so yeah, things that,
Beginning of a spiritual journey almost, maybe.
Just let go of it because it just makes you feel ugly and nasty and mean.
yep, sure.
Things that don't come.
Maybe one more.
Becoming clean.
Yeah, obviously, right? Coming into treatment, right? Deciding that you don't want to live in addiction anymore. That's a pretty big one for all of us. Some other common examples that I use are like anytime you finish some kind of school. So if you graduated high school or if you graduated college, right? You're going to go on to another phase of life. Okay, and then we talked about initiation. So we're all familiar with the term initiation, right? But just to be clear, this is the challenge part, right? This is where you experience some kind of distress that you eventually, hopefully, overcome. Okay, so what's some examples of initiation? Go ahead, Eric.
I did like, so my departure was like goal, dedication, nutrition, health, and so my initiation for that was like core muscles, sick, mental, and physical, like gym, working out,
Yeah,
stress on my body.
good example. Thank you. What else? Go ahead.
Starting a job.
Yeah, start a new job. Yep.
Just like the stress of responsibilities and like, or like, you become homeless, for example, all of a sudden, like, there's a lot there. There's a lot of like, you know, worry and anxiety and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the outcome might be that you learn from those and grow and become maybe more, appreciative or, you know, be more mature.
Mm-hmm. Good. One more example.
Taking care of being sober and dealing with financial institutions. You know, talking to people about the messes that you didn't make, but somebody else made, so you have to clarify things. go back and kind of relive some of that,
Mhm.
that ugly stuff to rectify the situations that somebody else did for you
Yep.
without your consent.
Yep.
I consider that kind of almost like abuse.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
So the idea with initiation, again, it's definitely the challenging part, it's definitely the stressful part, but hopefully some part of that is pushing you toward transformation, right? So we've talked about things like a new job orientation, right? It's super unfamiliar, you don't understand anything about it, but through, the first month of being on that job and getting some support, you kind of start to understand what your role is and what the system is and what your responsibilities are. So initiation is necessary for the transformation part, right? We could also think about something like, if you go to college and you join a fraternity, there's an initiation period, right? You need to figure out what the laws or the rules and the what's the word, I just lost it.
Policies.
Yeah, policies, right? Like how to behave. Yeah, the traditions, right? And you go through that process so that when you become a member of the fraternity, you have all of that understanding and knowledge.
Like a guideline.
Yeah, exactly, right? And another example, yep,
Plus, I even
is like the military, right? Everybody goes through basic training, so they get a basic understanding of the culture of the military that helps them transform from a civilian into a soldier, airman, etc., right?
Pamphlet.
So it's important to understand that you can't get to the good stuff without going through the bad stuff, right? We would never wish for any of us to go through a traumatic experience, but hopefully we all understand that to get to the good things in life,
Yeah.
there has to be some challenge that you navigate successfully. Sacrifice. That's the initiation part.
Sacrifice, yeah, that's good.
Yep.
That's a really good word for it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then the last one is the return, right? So the return is the sort of culmination, the consolidation, if you will, right? Where you've successfully navigated whatever the initiation was, and now you're on to the next phase, right? You've transformed yourself from whoever you were at departure through initiation, and now as you return,
To maintain,
it can be maintained, but really what we want to see is like continued development.
Okay, so maintain would be more in the initiation.
No, I think you're right. It's in the return, right? But you get to a point where you don't want to get stuck either, right? So again, this is a cycle. So when you get to the point where you have transformed, you've made some good headway, now you start to look at like what else can change or how can I continue to develop, right? So the return is sort of like a momentary thing, right?
your first paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's like a
So now-
stepping
so
stone.
So it could be, so you're like, you got your like, whatever, your reward.
Yeah.
Out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sacrifice.
Yeah,
Now you
exactly.
can maintain.
Yep.
Work, put in the work for it.
Now you know how to maintain it.
Yep.
Now you have the knowledge of how to maintain it.
Yep, exactly. And again, you can't just sit on your laurels, right? You can't just finish and then be
It's not just
done.
gonna happen, yeah. There has to be still be like the energy put into that.
Yep, and there'll be another opportunity for another departure after that return,
Okay.
right? Say like Paul's example of a new job. So you work and you get to the point where you get your first paycheck. You're not just going to quit the job and be done, right? You still continue to work. You still try to work up whatever the ladder is to get to the next position to make more money, et cetera, et cetera. That all make sense? Departure, initiation, return, that kind of sets the tone for the whole healing journey. And now we're getting to consolidation, which is like the end of the return. Okay, this is like the end of the process. Once we talk through this, we'll go back to the beginning. Okay, so let's start to talk through this. So, step 10 is transcending trauma. Everybody understand what transcend means?
Yeah.
What's it mean, Daniel?
It has to do with like kind of changing and moving, becoming different. Like, I always associated transcending with ascending, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I also associate like transcending, like from earth to heaven, like becoming more divine,
Yeah.
But it has no direction.
becoming a better version. Yeah.
Trajectory.
Yeah. You guys are all kind of right on the idea, right? It's changing direction, right? Moving through transcending or ascending, moving over, all those kinds of things. So a couple ideas to think about maybe. Again, I mentioned radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is a huge part of transcending trauma. Motivation and integration. So again, once we sort of get through the healing process or some cycle of the healing process, right, we have to figure out what happens next. So that's where integration and motivation come in, okay? What do we know about integration? What does it mean to integrate something?
Put something in your life or something you integrate, like why
Put together.
Put together.
Yeah,
Build.
To put together is a good way to think of it.
Build.
Yeah, to build, to connect, all those kinds of ideas, right? You take something that's outside of you and you make it part of yourself. What about motivation? What do you guys know about motivation?
If you don't have it, it's like you
Build up to,
Yeah, say it
Something you
again.
drive
to
you.
build up to,
To build up to, what does that mean?
like, setting yourself up.
Okay, yeah, exactly, right? To prepare yourself, sort of.
For a
reason.
sacrifice.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be for
or-
a sacrifice,
Or a reward.
but more like, yeah, just like the general idea of like staying on top of it, right? Not just to get through the process and then give up and be done,
Why
right?
would you do something?
Yeah, it's,
Stay ahead of it. Stay ahead of it.
stay ahead of it.
To work past it.
Yeah, exactly.
Be able to maintain it.
One way we can think about it is like staying prepared so you don't have to get prepared.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You can stop getting prepared, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you
Stop,
kind of,
cut that part out
Yeah.
and then have to maintain.
Yeah.
I see.
yeah.
Acting and not reacting.
Right, so we talk about the difference between responding and reacting, right? Reacting is sort of like an instinctual response where you don't have a lot of thought or intention behind it.
Okay.
Responding is sort of the opposite, where you do have time to have some thoughts about it, have some emotions about it, and then make an informed decision.
Do you think you spend more time responding than anything?
I mean, that would be ideal, but I think, no, most of us don't. Most of us get stuck reacting. Which is fine, because that's how our biological systems have been designed,
What do
right?
you- Oh, sorry.
That's right. Between our brain and our nervous system, there's a lot of things that happen without us thinking about it, right?
Right.
Your heartbeat, the way you breathe, the way that your body takes in sensory information. You don't have to think about all of those things. Those are instincts. And they're super important. They definitely serve functions. The newest part of our brain, evolutionarily, is the part that deals with responding. So even though you can learn how to do it, it's a skill that has to be developed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Go ahead, Eric.
What did you say about reacting? You repeat.
So reacting is sort of like instinctual, right? It's kind of like a thing that happens without any kind of thought or intention.
This is a lot of information.
Yeah, and this is just one. This is just one thing, right? We've got like 5 books worth of information. Yeah, and again,
Okay, sorry, so it's instinctual, anything that happens in what?
without intention.
Without, anything that happens without intention, okay.
That's out like out of our
So you can kind of think of one way to think of it is the difference between like the conscious and the subconscious. So not unconscious, but conscious is like willful, intentional, thoughtful. Subconscious, you don't have any control over it, right? It just happens. Again, things like your heartbeat, things like I can hear other conversations going on, but I can still pay attention to our conversation. I don't have to think about that.
is that multitasking?
Like when you're driving
It
and
can
all of
be.
a sudden you're like, wait, did I just run 8 red lights? Have I just you're thinking and you're driving automatically?
Yeah, I've done that.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Or just as simple as like talking out loud with like, interrupting someone, it's so simple, like how that can happen.
Yeah,
You
without
don't mean to do it and be rude, but like,
exactly.
hard to
Consciously
like practice
aware
that
of
skill.
the situation's happening.
Yeah. Okay, so the second part here is regaining self-regulation. So again, at some point in all of our lives, we had a handle on our emotional selves, even if that was like a long, long time ago, right? And maybe for some of us, we actually never did have a real good handle on our emotional regulation. Again, if you've experienced any kind of bullshit while you were a kid, before your brain fully developed, that shifts, right? The whole thing. It sets you up on a different kind of foundation than people who have loving, caring, supportive childhoods. Doesn't mean that you're always gonna be fucked up, and it doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that you have to figure out a different way of navigating the world than most people do. And you can see, right? There's people in this room who are working on that, right? And sometimes it takes decades, right? To Javier's point, sometimes you're not even aware of it until you're an old person, and then you're thinking back, or you have some kind of trigger, or you go to therapy and you decide to work on it, and then all of this stuff comes flooding back from when you were 9, 10, 11, 12, and you have to deal with that.
That could
So-
affect your whole life.
Yep, it will,
It
absolutely.
dictates
Well, it can dictate it,
if you let it.
but that's the difference between reacting and responding. If you continue to be reactionary, then your past trauma will dictate your future. If you go through the process of healing and establish self-regulation and start to learn how to navigate that effectively, then you can learn how to respond to those things instead of react.
We utilize those archetypes, like they're your inner warriors.
Mhm.
Super crucial for information.
Super,
I was
super,
told
super.
that, I don't know if it's true or not, but the only thing that's kept me personally alive wasn't PTSD, because it's a constant struggle to survive. It's kept me alive.
I mean, that's a sort of simplistic way to think of it, but, and I'm not saying that you're simple, I'm saying that
I wish I was.
there are, so again, like one aspect of PTSD is hypervigilance, right? Where like head on a swivel, you don't like being in social environments, right?
I know all the exits.
Yeah, exactly. You sit with your back to the wall. Lots of us have experience with
Who's
that.
a threat, who isn't?
Yep, exactly. Is that self-protective? Absolutely, right? You'll definitely have 1 or 2 little minutes of time. If anything actually does pop off, you'll be ready for it. However, you're sort of in a constant state of stress also, right? It starts to wear on your mind,
Body.
it starts to wear on your body, right? So there's like a balance. Should we all be aware of our environment and be aware of potential stressors? Definitely. Should we be stressed out and paranoid and start to create delusions about those things? Probably not.
Probably not.
And also, you know, it's kind of like the silver lining idea of PTSD, where it's like you had to navigate a whole bunch of bullshit. Did you develop some coping mechanisms? Sure. Would it maybe have been better that you didn't have to navigate all of that bullshit? Probably.
And those delusions cause us to be alone. And then
Well, they can, yeah. And then there's all sorts of different symptoms that come off of
Okay.
like the symptoms of post-traumatic stress that lead to other things.
Okay.
It can
I
be
think I see more
isolation.
like hypervigilance with that can cause.
I mean, because it's hard for people to interact with you, right?
Keep someone at a distance.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a constant boundary that you set up that it does keep you safe, but it also doesn't let anyone close,
Or have changed.
That gets lonely.
that gets lonely, for sure. Yeah, good. You guys are on top of it. Love that. So again, regaining self-regulation is a necessary part, right? You guys will all figure out your own way how to do that, and there is as many different ways as there are people in the room, but you have to do that. If you're gonna be successful in sobriety, if you're gonna get into anything that involves long-term healing, changing the trajectory of your life, this is a necessary step. Okay, and again, it could be group work like this, it could be treatment, you could get into therapy with a one-on-one counselor, you could go ride a horse and feel better about it. There's so many different ways that you guys can explore your own healing journey. Okay, and the last one here, we'll try and get through this and then go on break. Accepting your inner self. So this is kind of a tricky one, right? Because a lot of times in our active addiction, we're trying to navigate things around shame and guilt and fear and grief, right? A lot of times we take some of that and make it part of who we are, right? So one of my big things in talking about this is the language that we use. You guys ever been to AA meetings?
Yeah.
Who's been to an AA meeting, right? How do you introduce yourself?
I'm Cameron. I'm an alcoholic addict. 1925.
Yep. So it's present tense, right? You say, I am an alcoholic, right? So how is it gonna be easy for you to get past your active addiction if every time you go to a meeting, you remind yourself that that's who you are? Right? It's gonna be pretty challenging, right? So when we talk about accepting our inner self, there's a way to change that. You could say, I am a person who struggles with alcoholism. The alcoholism is separate from me. It's not who I am, right? It's something I've navigated. Just like I don't call myself a tattooed person, I'm a person who has tattoos. These weren't part of me 10 years ago, they're part of me now. They don't make me who I am. You guys understand the difference?
Is that like
I
saying,
statements, sorry.
I'm not angry, I'm a person who is
Here you
angry.
say, I'm a recovered alcoholic.
You could say, I'm a recovered alcoholic. To your point, you could say, I have anger, or I am a person who experiences anger. I'm not an angry person because you experience other emotions.
I was gonna say, I am angry, like, you're not angry,
You're experiencing anger.
you're.
Go ahead, Alan.
So that's what's all part of us, you're saying we have to learn to accept it and come look at it differently, or?
Well, I'm saying it's part of who you are, but it doesn't define who you
You
are.
don't make an identity out of it.
It's not your identity. It's not the thing that makes you who you are. It's a part of how you've existed and experienced life.
And it's often temporary.
I think what he's trying to tell us is that it doesn't have to be. Like, it could be, you know, if
Yeah.
you want it to be. but-
Right, and again, like, part of the healing process is the transformation of moving from where you were to somewhere different. So again, to constantly refer to yourself as an addict or an alcoholic in the process of recovery is sort of backwards, right?
That's what I always thought too.
Yeah, and this is a new way of thinking of it, and there's
Right.
nothing wrong with AA, and they've been around a long time, and they've helped a lot of people.
It does challenge them though.
But
You
it-
keep telling yourself.
But it's like, yeah, if we keep those same patterns of thought, it's gonna be more difficult to transform, to make headway, to change. So the accepting of your inner self, what are some processes or what are some ideas around how you guys learn to accept your inner self?
Besides radical acceptance,
I mean, radical acceptance is the good one, that's what I've mentioned, but how do you do that?
just being real. Like my self-esteem used to be up and down, and then once I accepted myself for the negative parts as well, my self-esteem just stays good.
Yeah.
And it's just being real with myself and being honest. And sometimes that does require a little feedback and willingness to hear what they're actually saying,
Mhm.
like that drop those defenses.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's all a good thing, I think.
Yeah, so we've already talked a little bit about self-awareness, right? Before you can change anything, you have to be aware of it and try to understand it.
You gotta make yourself vulnerable too.
Yeah, there's a vulnerability of coming to terms with who you are and what you've done, for sure. What else? Excuse me.
That's the biggest one for me is vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Because PTSD kind of, I choose to let it dictate how I share. Because I usually don't talk. I go kind of chatty Cathy or but it's the only way to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I don't ask, then I won't know.
Yeah, so a word that I use often when I'm talking about this is authenticity, right? And to Daniel's point, sort of like the idea of embracing all of who you are, right? And understanding that you can't heal unless you acknowledge that you've been injured, right? This is a big deal for me in my own recovery. Getting to the point where I understand that I have been hurt and I have hurt other people, but those things don't determine how I'm going to continue moving through my life, right? They've definitely impacted it. They've definitely changed how I look at the world and how I look at relationships, but they're not the thing that defines how I exist.
I would say maybe also looking at who you used to be can help, because it's like how you got here.
Yeah.
So like even if you're not that way anymore, acknowledging it used to be that way, and maybe like analyzing that and saying, okay, well I didn't like that about myself, or like, oh yeah, maybe I'm still that way or something. So like not just your present self, but I think your past self, just observing it and being real about that as well.
Yeah, necessary. And I love that term acknowledgement, right? It's sort of the opposite of distracting ourselves or ignoring it or trying to numb out, right? It's looking at it and saying, yes, absolutely, this is what happened. This is how it changed me. And also, this is how I want to change moving forward and how I want to get better. Yep. Okay, that kind of catches us all up to stage 10. Any questions on that stuff?
No.
Why does all the good stuff go by so fast? The time.
Great question. What do you think about it?
It's a lot of, stuff to digest, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, a lot of this stuff is, accepting it and being real about it and being honest about it. And, cause if you're not honest about it, then you just can't, move forward.
Yeah.
And sitting there spinning your wheels and I went from living in the trauma to, okay, being the victim, so what the fuck am I gonna do about it? It's gotta stop. Cause I had a cop, he said, once you have something in your hand next time, I was like, what's that? You just have something in your hand, because I'll eat your shit. And I was like, it's gotten that bad. You know, it's gotten that bad. You know, this cop's telling me, I'm gonna smoke your ass, you know, I'm like, you know, so I was doing bad shit. PTSD out there in the community, you know, doing fucked up shit. And I'm hurting myself and I'm putting everybody else in danger because I'm not willing to accept what happened, move forward, and get better with it. You know, so that's why I'm here. And I got blessed by the attorney and judge with it. You know, it's like now or never.
It's a good opportunity.
It's the best opportunity in the world.
Yeah.
So you can live or die.
Mm-hmm.
You choose it. I choose to live.
And here you are.
But I don't want to live in this shit anymore. What I've been doing.
Yep.
And I've come to accept that. You know, and thank you for being here, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. So, just to finish off on one point, right? When we talk about this stuff, none of these processes are simple or easy, right? I write it on the board and we talk about it in an hour and you guys get lots of good information and that's great, but this requires time, intention, and effort, right?
Work.
Yep, and lots of effort, right? So, to Javier's point, as you guys continue to move through this, this is something that you'll have to repeat again and again and again, right? And that can feel overwhelming and that can feel like a ton of work, but also every time you move through this cycle, there's opportunities to give yourself acknowledgement for your accomplishments, right? There's opportunities for you to say, yeah, I am different today than I was yesterday. Because we often talk about sobriety only happening one day at a time, right? It's not like a lifetime thing, but it is. But it's every day you wake up and you make those decisions to stay sober, to pursue sobriety, to keep moving in a positive direction. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you for your time and attention. You're on break. Be back at 10:30 because you don't have anywhere else to be.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate
Good to have you
it.
here.
Yes, I would like a whole thing of this class.
Yeah, I'll give you the reading list.
Hey, I would also like to
Yeah, I'll print it
I
out.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Thank you.
Not yet. After the second half.